the fungi, we have already studied various types of organisms like Rhizopus, Penicillium, then Puccinia and Agaricus. So now there is one simple example which actually comes under Deuteromycetes called as Alternaria solani. So Alternaria solani, it is an obligatory parasite which causes a disease. It is a pathogenic fungi coming under class Deuteromycetes. So belongs to family Dematiaceae. Now the Alternaria solani is a pathogenic fungus which causes a disease called as early blight in potato. So in potato it causes infection, and the symptoms of this disease is there are some kind of yellow brownish spots seen on the leaf, and they are scattered on the leaf surface. So these spots which are seen on the leaves, so they appear like target boards, which are one kind of boards which are called as target boards. Now these are target boards which are seen as the symptoms. Hence the symptoms of this disease is called as the target board effect. So target board effect is it is a symptom of the disease where the spots, the yellowish brown spots appear as target boards. That is the symptoms of this disease. Then the other symptoms is the potato tubers which are formed. Those potato tubers are having a somewhat dark brown peel. So normally the potatoes are having some kind of light brown peel, that is the cover on the potato tuber. But here what happens, the region where the infection takes place, so there we can see a kind of dark brown peel of appearing. Now in this region, the pulp of the potato, means the part of the potato inside the peel, it is having a kind of rusty appearance. So that rusty appearance, or which is somewhat brown, actually the inner part is somewhat whitish in color. But here what happens, due to the brownish appearance, so or the rusty appearance of the pulp is seen due to the infection. That is another symptom of this Alternaria. And if you come to the mycelium, so the mycelium is endophytic and it is septate because it belongs to the Deuteromycetes and hence it is septate. And again the mycelium is branched and it may be intercellular or intracellular. So when it is present in the plant, the hyphae may penetrate the cells and become intracellular, or it may be growing branched in between the cells, that is intercellular. And then this is somewhat having the hyphae are somewhat light brown in color, and there are no absorption of hyphae. That means there are no haustoria present in the fungi. Now this mycelium is either intracellular or intercellular, within the cells or between the cells. So then if you come to the reproduction in Alternaria, so which is very simple, only asexual reproduction takes place in Alternaria. There is no vegetative method and there is no sexual method of reproduction. So the asexual reproduction takes place by simple conidia. So the hyphae gives rise to what are called as the conidiophores. So these conidiophores gives rise to what are called as conidium or conidia. So these conidia gives rise to multicellular structure. So there are septate cells. So there are a single conidium. It is aerial in growth. It is aerial in appearance. It is the vertical hyphae that grows from the hyphae which is present inside the leaf. So this hyphae which produces the conidia, that is the conidiophores in other words, they grow or they are produced exogenously. So that means they protrude out of the leaf cells, and the terminal ends of the conidiophores, they produce the conidia. So this conidium which is produced the single at the tip of the conidiophore, so it is somewhat elongated, or sometimes it is dark colored, and also it is having many cells, septate, and it is having certain beak. So this conidium produces cells, and it is producing a beak like cells at the tip. So these are the conidia which are produced. So the conidium produces the cells. So there are more than 8 cells or even up to 14 cells in each conidium, and these cells which are having septa and in vertical directions. So these conidia, they are born end to end, and they are found in chains. Sometimes there may be 2 or 3 chains. Normally a single chain of cells is seen in each conidium, and then these conidia are released. The spores which are produced, they are released, they get separated after complete development, and they cause infection in the cultures. And such conidia are abundant, especially in the house dust. So they germinate when they are coming in contact with the suitable temperature and in the presence of moisture. So they produce germ tubes and then mycelia. So this is simple type of reproduction in Alternaria, which is the only asexual reproduction. So that means in the characters of deuteromycetes, when we have studied, deuteromycetes are called as imperfect fungi because they exhibit only asexual type of reproduction. There is no sexual type of reproduction which is present in phycomycetes, ascomycetes and basidiomycetes. That is in Rhizopus, in Penicillium and in Agaricus we find these different types of reproduction methods. But in Alternaria, which belongs to deuteromycetes, imperfect fungi, so there the presence of sexual reproduction is absent. So that is about a simple explanation of Alternaria, which produces early blight disease in potato, where the potato tubers become dark brown, the peel of the potato tuber becomes dark brown, and in that region there is a rusty or a brown appearance seen in the pulp of the potato. So that is one example. Now related to fungi, we come across another group of organisms called as lichens. So lichens are one group of organisms. So these lichens, they are a small group of peculiar type of plants they are considered. So these lichens, they are made up of thallus. The body of a lichen is made up of thallus. That means there is no differentiation of stem, root and leaf, and it is having 2 components, an algal component and a fungal component. So the algal component of the lichen is called as phycobiont, and whereas the fungal component is called as mycobiont. So we can say that lichens are association of fungi and algae. So there is a kind of symbiotic association between these two. So this intimate association of the 2 organisms are such that the two of them together form a single plant, and that is seen in the body of a lichen. And when we come to the algae and fungi, so about 85 to 90% of the body consists of this fungi. So majority of the body consists of fungi. Only about 10%, about 5 to 10%, it consists of the alga or the algae. So both of them together constitutes the body of the lichen. So here algae and lichen, they are symbiotic, associated to each other. Fungi absorbs the minerals and water from the surroundings where the lichens live. Algae, which utilizes the water and the minerals, and in the presence of light, it conducts photosynthesis. And we know that algae are photosynthetic organisms, whether it is red algae, green algae or brown algae. So all algae, they contain chlorophyll and they are photosynthetic. So hence here the algae, the algal component of the lichen, it conducts photosynthesis and provides food to the fungi. So that is a kind of symbiotic association between the two. And these lichens, they are divided into two types based on what type of fungi is present in them. So as we have studied in fungi, there are phycomycetes, there are ascomycetes, basidiomycetes and deuteromycetes. So different groups of that. Based on which group of fungi are present in this lichen. So if the lichen is containing ascomycetes, they are called as ascolichens. If the lichens are containing basidiomycetes, they are called as basidiolichens, based on the fungal component. But algal component is usually chlorophyll containing. There is no any difference in the what type of algae is present in the lichen. But depending upon what type of fungal is present or fungus is present, we can classify the lichens into the ascolichens, where the fungal component is ascomycetes, and means any example of ascomycete. And if the fungal component is basidiomycete or basidiomycetes, it is basidiolichens. Like that, this is one classification. Now whether it is asco or basidiolichens, lichens grow on rocks and walls of the houses. And they are usually xerophytic in nature, means they can face the long periods of drought conditions, scarcity of water. They can live without water, and hence they are xerophytic in nature, so they can withstand the drought conditions for a long period. Then even the lichens, they grow on soil, they grow on rocks, and they grow on the bark of the trees, and some lichens are growing even on leaves of the plants. So there the lichens are growing in different kinds of habitats. Now based on this habitat, again we can classify three types of lichens. Now if the lichens are growing on rock, they are called as saxicolous lichens. So on rocks or stones, when they grow, they are called as saxicolous lichens. Now if they grow on bark of the trees, they are called as corticocolous lichens. That is, on large trees, on the trunk of the trees they grow, and they are called as cortico. So then terricolous lichens, so they grow on soil, means terrestrial in other words. So here terricolous means terrestrial lichens. So on that basis this classification is done. So this is done on the based on the habitat. This is based on the fungal component. So based on fungal component, these are the two types, asco and basidiolichens. Based on the habitat, in which part of the environment they live. So usually on bare rocks, there the lichens are found, and they are called as saxicolous lichens. Then when they are found on bark of the trees, on the trunk of the trees, corticolous lichens, and when they grow on the soil, terrestrial, that is terricolous lichens, they are classified. This is one type of classification. Of course, there is one more type of classification based on the habit of the lichens. So this is habitat, on what type of environment they grow, but based on the habitat of the lichens, means in what form they grow, and also in what manner of attachment, what is the manner of attachment to the substratum, either it is rock, leaves, or soil, or any part of the plant like a trunk and a bark, like that. So like this, based on the habit, the growth, manner of growth, the form of growth, and the manner of attachment, again there are three types of lichens. So they are called as crustose lichens, foliose lichens, and fruticose lichens. This is another type of classification. So this is how lichens are classified, based on a fungal component, based on habitat, and based on habit of growth type, and the manner of attachment. So crustose, foliose, and fruticose. Now crustose, crust, earth's crust. When we study about the earth, it is a layer of the earth, the top layer of the earth, a thin layer of the earth. Similarly here, the body of the lichen, it is flat, and it is broad, it is spread, and this is not much lobed. So it spreads without having any folds or like that, and it is somewhat leaf-like. It appears leaf-like on the surface of where it is growing, either rock or bark of the trees. Such lichens are called as crustose lichens, and this crustose lichens, the surface is usually divided into more or less hexagonal areas. Suppose this is just the surface. So these surface of the lichen is having some hexagonal areas almost. So these are called as areolae. So that is how the crustose lichens are characterized by morphological appearance, the external features which we can identify or find out. So these these are just like a thin layer. They appear like a very thin layer, which we refer it as the crust of the earth, and thus it is called as crustose lichens. And in this we come across graphica examples, and hemotoma is example of crustose lichens. Then if you come to the foliose, so foliage means leaves actually. So foliage means the leaf-like. So these lichens are leaf-like, and they are somewhat flat, just like the crustose lichens, but they are much lobed. They are having many lobes there, and these appear leaf-like in appearance. So they resembles the crinkled and twisted leaves. So when the leaves become somewhat twisted or somewhat crinkled, what we say, folded like, so that is why they are called as the foliage or foliose lichens. And these edges, which are usually, they are curled, the edges of the lichens which are crinkled or somewhat twisted like, so they curled up, and they form the outer part of the lichens. And these lichens are having some root-like structures or some rhizoid-like structures, to which they attach by the help of to the substratum. They are called as rhizinae. So the presence of rhizinae is the characteristic feature of these lichens. Now in crustose, the presence of the hexagonal areas. So those hexagonal areas are called as areolae, by which we can identify the crustose lichens. So similarly, the foliose lichens, can be identified by the crinkled appearance, by the edges of the lichens which curl up, and also the rhizoids, which are rhizoid-like outgrowths. So these rhizoid-like structures are called as rhizinae, and they help in the attachment to the substratum. So in this we come across various examples like Parmelia and Xantheria and even Citraria. So like that, that is examples. Now next, the third type of lichen is fruticose. Fruticose lichen is somewhat slender and somewhat it is freely branched. It is not spread like crustose and foliose. Crustose and foliose, they are almost same in some morphological characters, but they differ in the presence of lobes and the presence of the curly nature of the thallus and all that. But in case of this fruticose lichen, so this is very slender and it is freely branched. So these branches which are present in this fruticose, they may be cylindrical in shape, or they may be flat ribbon like, or sometimes they may be thread like, and they form some tuft like structures. So all those branches, they grow together and form some tuft or group like structures in the body of the lichen, and this thallus is attached to the substratum by small flat disc like structure, and that is not having any particular structure. So that is the structure of this fruticose. In this we come across Asnia and Cladonia, some two examples. These are the types of the lichens which we come across. Then if we come to the reproduction of the lichens, how do lichens reproduce? So lichens reproduce by vegetative method and also sexual method. So the reproduction in lichens. So in vegetative method there are fragmentation, which we have come across in the previous examples. So these lichens, by the help of fragmentation, they reproduce vegetatively. So fragmentation is a simple type of vegetative method where a part of the thallus, a segment of the thallus gets separated due to some abnormal conditions in the atmosphere. So when it is growing on the rock, so due to wind or due to rain which falls on the rocks, so a part of the thallus may get separated, a segment of the thallus, and so that segment, which we call it as fragment, it is capable of developing into a new thallus when it comes in in contact with another substratum, and there it will further grow into a new organism. So that is accidentally, it is a method of vegetative reproduction which takes place accidentally, where the thallus gets broken into piece and it is capable of developing into a new plant or the new thallus. So then another method of vegetative method is Isidia and Soradia. So these are structures. So on the surface of the thallus, small finger-like projections or papilla-like structures. So these papillate outgrowths on the surface of the thallus, so they are called as Isidia. So these consists of a certain group of cells. The Isidia separate from the thallus, and when they come in contact with a suitable substratum, they develop into a new thallus. They are called as Isidia. So Isidia are small papillate outgrowths which are produced on the upper surface of the thallus, and they are the propagules of vegetative method, or they are vegetative reproductive bodies. Then Sauridae also are the same, but these are some small bud-like structures. They are not much elongated like papillae, and these bud-like structures which grow on the surface of the thallus, they also contain some algal cells which are surrounded by a few hyphae together, and then they get separated from this thallus, and they are capable to develop into a new thallus. Then the asexual reproduction is very simple in case of lichens when we compare to the sexual reproduction. So asexual reproduction takes place by the hyphae of few lichens. So not all part of the lichen is involved in the asexual. So this hyphae of some lichens, they break into small structures which are called as oidea. So these oidea structures, they are produced by the lichen, that is the fungal component. Now when the oidea gets separated, so when they come in contact with a suitable algae, so it is the only fungal component of the lichen which produces the oidea, but it does not contain algae. But whereas in Sauridae we see that there are algae cells and both hyphae. So together they are capable of developing a complete well-developed lichen. But in asexual reproduction, oidea are purely fungal structures. So these fungal structures which are get separated from the this mycobiont, they are called as oidea. So these oidea, they produce lichen only when they come in contact with the algae. So those algal cells and the oidea together will develop only into a lichen, and then these lichens are were produced by the both algae and fungal component. And in certain lichens there are structures called as pycniospores, as in Puccinia. So this pycnium is produced and these spores are produced here. So large number of spores are produced by the certain structures of the lichens, and there is asexual reproduction, which is a very rare one. Now if you come to the sexual type of reproduction in lichens, here actually the male and female reproductive organs are produced in the same thallus. So in the lichen there is a structure which is called as apothecium, or it is sometimes called as perithecium, or sometimes perithecia they are called as. So this flask shaped or somewhat cup like or sometimes disc like structures called as apothecium. In some lichens apothecium is produced, in some other lichens perithecium is produced, but both are involved in the sexual reproduction. So there is production of male and female reproductive bodies in this perithecium and the apothecium, which involve in the reproduction. So the male reproductive organ, which is called as the spermagonium. So this spermagonium, or which is also called as the pycnium, it is also called as. So that is the male reproductive part of the lichen. And in the female reproductive part, so the ascogonium is the female reproductive part. So the ascogonium, or which is also called as carpogonium, so this is the female reproductive part of the lichen. So the male and female reproductive part, so these produce the male gametes and these are the female gametes. So these are produced in apothecia or perithecia. So these apothecia or perithecia, so these are the fruiting bodies, means which produces the reproductive organs. So they are usually cup like or disc like, and in this cup-like or the disc-like structure, so there the surface of this thallus, it is raised above. So from the surface these are produced, so they are raised above the surface of the thallus, and in this cup-like structure at the bottom there is a structure called as hymenium. So the fertile part of the apothecium is the hymenium, which contains the female or the male reproductive organs, and they consist of paraphysis and asci. So there are some sterile structures which are called as paraphysis. So this hymenium consists of ascus or asci plural, and also paraphysis which grow vertically, means from the lower hyphae, and each ascus it produces the ascospores, and these ascospores are involved in the sexual union. And then when we come to the other part of the reproductive organ, so this spermagonium is a flat structure or a flask shaped structure. So inside this we find the elongated cells which produces the male gametes called as spermatia. They are so called because they are non-motile. So the spermagonium is a flask shaped cavity, and this flask shaped cavity has an opening called as ostiole. So that ostiole, through which the male gametes which are produced on the inner surface, they are non-motile and they are called as spermatia. So they are released through the ostiole. So that is the ostiole through which the sperms or the male gametes, we do not call them as sperms because they are non-motile. Usually sperms are motile there, but here exceptionally some organisms like lichens and even many other organisms and fungi, they don't contain motile gametes, and hence they are called as spermatia. So these are produced from the fertile layer of this spermagonium. Now the ascogonium or the carpogonium, that is the female reproductive body. So that female reproductive body is also developed in the algal layer of the lichen. So these lichens, they produce some kind of multicellular structures like this. So these are made up of many cells. So the lower part of the coiled structure, that is the carpogonium or the ascogonium. So this straight part of the ascogonium is called as the trichogyne, where it receives the spermatia. The lower part of the ascogonium is called as the oogonium. So the lower part of the carpogonium or ascogonium is called as the oogonium, and the spermatia are actually, they come in contact with the trichogyne. So the trichogyne is the one which the protruding part of the carpogonium. So it is sticky in nature. So the trichogyne, they project out of the ascogonium, and these trichogynes are sticky in nature. So when the spermatia are released and carried or transported, so they come in contact and the wall of contact dissolves in between the two. So the male nucleus of the spermatia, so it will dissolve, or after the dissolve of the wall of the contact, so the male nucleus will pass downward. So this male nucleus will pass downward to the oogonium, where it forms this zygote. So there the zygote is formed there, and this zygote will further develop into the ascospores, and then the ascospores are further developing into the hyphae. So this is in case of ascolichens. Similarly, when we take the basidiolichens, basidiospores are produced. So as we call them as ascus here, so basidium is produced in basidiolichens and basidiospores are produced, and the further development of this zygote takes place. So that is about the type of the sexual reproduction. And just a brief account of the economic importance of lichens. So lichens are used for various purposes. Either they are used in the food material or they are used in medicine also. For example, lichens are used as food material. For example, in Iceland, means a country, Citraria, a lichen is used with mixed with the wheat flour and used as an edible part. Even another lichen is called as Umbilicaria. It is used in Arctic regions for travelers where it escapes the persons which are in danger of starvation, where there will be no water, and hence that is one lichen. There is another lichen which is called as Lichanora, which is used as food in barren plains and mountains. So in mountain areas and in open plains, this Lichanora is used. And Parmelia, which is called as the rock flower or stone flower, it is used in preparation of curries for its delicacy due to the content of the ingredients. And there is one more lichen called as Cladonia, which is used as the food for reindeer. Hence it is called as reindeer moss. It is also used as food for cattle. And lichens are also of ecological importance. For example, lichens, when they grow on rocks, they release a certain kind of chemicals, and these chemicals, by the action of these chemicals, the rocks are dissolved, and fine rock particles, they form a thin layer on the surface and enable for the growth of vegetation. So like that, when a thin layer of humus or soil particles are formed on the rocks, they enable for the growth of vegetation, that is which helps in the succession of vegetation. That is for ecological importance. Then certain lichens are used in medicine. For example, there is a lichen called as the dog lichen, called as Peltigera, used for treatment of hydrophobia. And there is another lichen called as Loberia, which is used for treatment of lung diseases. That is how certain lichens are used in treatment of diseases and used as medicine. Certain chemicals are also obtained from lichens. For example, lungwort, a lichen, is used in the tanning and perfumery industries. And a lichen which is called as Rosella, it is used as coloring the woolen and silk fabrics. So like this, the lichens are used for various purposes. So another important aspect of lichen is mycorrhiza. So this related fungi which are related to the roots of the plant are called as mycorrhiza. So these are related to lichens, but they are not actually lichens. Certain fungi which are symbiotic association with the roots of some plants is called as mycorrhiza. For example, in pinus plant, gymnosperm, there is a fungus called as glomus. So it is associated with the roots of the pinus plant, and it is having symbiotic association. Such association is called as mycorrhiza. Now there are three types of mycorrhiza which we can classify. So ectomycorrhiza is one type. and endomycorrhiza is another type. So endomycorrhiza is another type of mycorrhiza. So ectomycorrhiza means if the fungi is surrounding the tip of the root, it is completely entangled or it is completely enveloping the tip of the roots, it is called as ectomycorrhiza. But however, some of the hyphae will penetrate into the root and it is present intercellular. So this intercellular hyphae which is present, it helps in the absorption, and the other part of the hyphae which is completely enveloping the tip of the root, it will help in the absorption of the minerals and water from the soil. That is ectomycorrhiza. Endomycorrhiza means they are completely inside. They may be even intracellular. So these hyphae, they penetrate the root hairs, epidermis, the cortex of the root, and even the hyphae are intracellular in the cortex region, and such hyphae or such type of association is called as endomycorrhiza. But however, some of the hyphae is projecting or produced out of the roots in the soil for absorption. That is endomycorrhiza. But most of the hyphae is inside, intracellular. But here it is intercellular, but majority of the hyphae is completely enveloping the tip of the root. When both the types of hyphae are present, it is called as ectoendomycorrhiza. So some of the hyphae is ectomycorrhiza, some of the hyphae is endomycorrhiza. When both the type of condition, means it is the combination of the ecto and endomycorrhiza, and here the fungal hyphae form the sheath at the surface, and also within the root they are intercellular and also intracellular. That is called as the ectoendomycorrhiza. So this is one small association which is related to fungi, and that is about the study of lichens.